Welcome, everyone. This is video number 4, interview number 4, collaborative conversation number 4 with Gaia Morrissette. A couple of weeks later, and we're continuing our journey into business and life. And as part of the Wellther series, you know that Gaia has some great insights about business and life. And we're going to get started into this, our conversation. And one of the places I'd like to start today is being alive. Now, we talk about being and being human and being fully human and being natural and that part, but there's something about aliveness, not the can of drink. And we can tell folks by that laugh, I'm sure if we could can what it is that Gaia knows about being alive, I'm sure we all would like to have a bit of a drink of that. But let's just go over to aliveness and being alive. Can we start there? What's your thoughts about being alive or aliveness?
I believe, and I really feel, I feel alive. I feel like, there's a huge difference between, I know even with my own journey in life, that when I feel numb and I feel almost like disconnected from myself, from everything, from people, from my body, from my senses, from everything, there's this it's almost like there's this film between you and who you really are. And when that film gets washed away or break through, there's this, on the other side, it's like everything is so awake and alive and tingling and exciting. And it's almost like it sizzles. It's like electricity. And it's like this electricity of not only in your body, but of everything possible around you.
So a sense of magic?
Well, yes, I would say very magical.
Well, I wrote an article recently about the magician and the mystic. And can you just share with us what your thoughts are about magic and this notion of magician maybe, and how it links to business and life?
So for me, when I say magic, it's about, more of the mystic side. It's about not, pulling rabbits from hats and card tricks, but more about connecting to all the life force, energy, and essence of everything that exists around us. And being able to tap into that energy and learning how to harness that energy and focus that energy. And when you can do that, you can then create what you want to create in your business. And it affects how you move in your business, because now you're not just moving from this like autopilot or numb sensation or like trying to figure stuff out. It's almost like you don't need to try to figure anything out. It's about just allowing everything to be and getting all of that information and data from all around you, which is what happens when you're in that magical space and that magical place and when you've tapped in. Then the other really awesome thing about being a magical being is that you're completely tapped in to your intuition, your instincts. And from those places, you make decisions that work beautifully and with ease.
Yeah, a little bit more. That's a great great segue, I think, to something else. Keep going.
Okay. All right. So when we learn to tap into our intuitiveness and our instincts, so for me, I want to define those two. So instincts are our primal self-preservation, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. It's that primal part of us of survival. So that's what our instincts are. And our bodies start to tell us, is this safe? Is this good? Is this bad? And that's the instinct part of it, right? And so when we're going to make decisions around our business and or people or collaborations or hiring people, and we tap into that instinct of, is this a good fit or not a good fit, and we know where it lives in our bodies, then we make decisions that always work out perfectly. And we all have this ability to know before something happens. We all have this skill set. But we've been told that we've been taught, especially when we were kids, to not listen to it and to ignore it. And what happens is, I mean, they did studies on, I can't remember the amount of people that they did the study with, but it was a lot of people who had experienced trauma and violent crimes. And every one of them's instinct told them that they were going to be in danger before it happened. And the difference is it was either instantaneous or there was a longer period of time. And that's where, you know, the more adept you are, I think that time changes. But every single one of us has that instinct of our self-preservation and safety. And so when we can learn to tap that into that and respect that and trust that, then we make decisions from that place. So that's the instinct. And then the intuitiveness is like when we're connected to our higher awareness, our ability to observe and take in so many different variables that our kind of human brain can't filter or consciously are aware of. And so we then start making better choices. We have less expensive life lessons, because we can course correct sooner. There's all these really cool things that happen when we can see and connect on an intuitive level of where do we need to go, what posts to everything from social media posts to who am I going to collaborate with, to who do I reach out to what phone call do I make, to everything. When we move in that place of intuitive and instinctual perspective, our business boom with ease.
Okay. So those are elements I'm going to use the word conduit. Mm-hmm. They're coming in, and you're going out, and there's this sort of flow that's taking place because you're tapping into this other information, right? Mm-hmm. It's more than data, right? You know, datas are just, but there's something there that's a little bit more whole, but you still got to do something with it to turn it into that knowledge wisdom storyline. So conduit. So is there a way in which to enhance that conduit, or is there something there about conduit enhancement? Like, I'm just tapping into my conduit right now.
No, exactly. It's just awesome. I feel like being a conduit is where we let go of our preconceived human ideology that filters through the information and judge it. Like I feel like when you're a conduit, you can push aside your human judgments and fears and insecurities, and you can move that aside to allow that data, that knowledge, that wisdom, that feeling, that knowing from not just from your higher consciousness, but for connecting into global consciousness, to connecting into the universe, right? And we can, and you can but the key for that to happen is that you have to be able to learn how to move you aside and all of your stuff and all of your insecurities, fears, blockages, even perspectives and perceptions of how you think, and the attachment of how you think things should be, or what it's supposed to look like, and what does it mean, and the meaning of all of those things. And when we can move that aside and we can allow that information to come in through a different filter of just knowing and accepting and trusting, then we make choices from that place. And we can then we can take in a little bit of this information and that information, and we can kind of put it all together and let some of our own personal experiences come into that information and apply it to how it needs to apply in our business and our lives and our relationships. But in order for that pure, it's almost like purity, like this pure energy without any kind of filter in it, needs to come in first before we can do what we need to do with it.
So I think you're talking about bias. Like that's another way to another
Yes.
way to throw into this is just moving the bias aside, letting it flow through. And then I think it's also important to figure out of what flows through, because that's a form of knowing, but really the lived experience comes from that which you know you apply.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be true for what you're getting at?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not applying it, then you're not having the deeper, richer concept of the lived experience. Because, well, I read about it. Oh, I heard about it. But what does that mean? I've got to do something with that.
Yeah, I think it's like that. Now you step into it. It's like you step into this flow, and it becomes, now it integrates as being who you are and how you move and how you think, and it does do a rewiring of those old biases and these other things, so that you have new knowledge and new wisdom, right? And now you start to move from this new perspective.
And gaining that new perspective is so important, because sometimes, and I think you're hinting at it, is not everything is facing forward to you. There's things that are going on. There's things that are going on peripheral, or there's the ripple effect of your business that's going to come back in another way, and therefore you have to be open to this intuitive conduit to be able to have that flow take place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts about that? Or add
Yeah.
to that?
Okay. So I'm going to say, so for me, the way that I look at it is everything weaves together. Everything affects everything else. So when we are aware of, there's not just this here. There's all that lives over here. There's all that lives behind us. Yeah. And then there's all that lives below us. And then there's the stuff that's happening in the other room, but yet affects your life, your business. How other people move in the world affects your life, your business. So it's about, I guess, it's about the understanding too of how everything interweaves and plays and dances with one another. Because if you don't, and I think that's that sacred knowledge, that juicy knowledge of wisdom and knowing, and it's like, because you can allow yourself to understand that this moment is just one, in this experience, in this one moment is, and my interpretation of it is only one thing of the million things that are happening right now all around me, and in 2 minutes from now there's going to be another bunch of million things going on, and how do they all play with each other?
Well, and what you're doing is you're reminding me, as I'm a writer, so one of the things I do is I'll write about things like, well, what are the 5 tenets of this, or what are the 10 aspects of this, or what are the 10 juicy elements of this? And I sometimes go to elements because of elemental. And there is a couple of ways of looking at this notion of elemental. And so for whatever reason, I'm being directed to ask you about elements and elemental, and how does that play itself out in your world?
So for me, as a magical being that's completely connected and alive with everything around me, the reason I can tap in and connect to everything that's alive and around me is because everything's made up of elements. Everything that is created on this plane, in this dimension, on earth, is made up of elements. And so being an elemental is part of who I am, is being able to talk to those, understand those elements, how those elements affect different elements and different things that are happening all around me. And so for me, that's what being an elemental is about, being able to really connect and drop in and understand that each element and everything is made up of those elements that exists around us, that we can see and feel and experience.
Yeah, and then there's the periodic table made up of all the different elements.
Exactly, right? Like everything that exists is made up of, there's elements that make it into, manifest it into this reality.
And then there's the magical elements, or the elementals, like the fairies, right? And the pixies. And we can't forget about them because, where are they?
And the dragons and the mer people, and yes.
And the stone people,
and the
tree people.
Yeah.
So the notion of elementals, whichever way you want to look at this, is an important, because it's what you bring together. Now, some people might say bring the elements together to build something. Some people might say bring the elements to grow something. Build, grow. Where would you go with that?
Build, grow. Well, I feel like the word build is very human. I guess is the best way to put it. It's like, okay, I'm going to build a house. So it's like, I'm basically going to take these different components and I'm going to put them together to create what I want it to be into existence. And I feel like the word grow is more organic. It's like, there's no really control over grow, right? Building is all about, you can systematically control this, what the outcome is. And growing is like, it just is going to happen, how it's going to happen. You can't make a tree grow in a certain way. I mean, well, you can, but it's a lot of work, right? You have to work really, really hard to make that happen, right? But it's like, growing just happens. And it's just like with people, when we grow, there's no real, like, this is how it's going to look and this is the outcome that's going to happen. There's no true control of the narrative in that, right? So growing is like letting go of expectations and control. And building is like, I have a particular expectation and a goal, and that it needs to meet these expectations.
Yes. Well, I've gone through the same thing, and I'm always very alert when I'm going to use the word build and when I'm going to use the word grow, because they both are apropos. And if you use them in the correct way in writing, because as people know, I write, and the way in which you use the words conjure up, really important images that lead to decisions, that lead to actions, that lead to outcomes. All right. But I know one of the words that you use, and we know that words matter, I think we've established that already, is that in your work and in your life, you might use a word like priestess.
Yes, in my world, I'm a high priestess of divine sexual magic as well as elementals. And so this is about how I show up, how I understand how all this stuff works together, and the responsibilities that go along with having that knowledge, and then also the responsibilities that go along with teaching and passing on that knowledge to my apprentice, to my students, as kind of the guardian of that knowledge. So that word, the word priestess is, and being a high priestess is, that's what that means. It's like you're the keeper of that information and the responsibilities that go along with that.
So in terms of the priestess, then, truly understanding what it means to be alive, to deal with the elementals, the notion of conduits, these would be important words that would apply to serving as a priestess. Am I
Yes.
correct in that as well?
Oh yeah. It's incredibly important. All of those words are incredibly important to being able to serve, and to serve from a place of light. So moving in and moving in that place of life, not just life, but light and love, and not and choosing to move from that place versus choosing from moving from a place of manipulation, control, and abusing those powers and manipulating those powers to do harm to yourself or others. So
Right. So it's something to explore. So if there's priestess, then there's the priest,
mhm.
not necessarily in the same as we would understand as a religious context, but this notion of the magic, the conduit, the elementals. There are aspects of that can be woven into the life, whether you're male or female.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or you're connected to divine, whether you're moving from a more divine masculine or divine feminine space, because I want to, for all of the fluid gender and identities and being very all inclusive, right? So you don't have to be female to be a priestess, and you don't have to be male to be a priest. It's whatever calling that looks like for you. And
Yes.
however, whatever that resonates in your calling in that is, it just needed to honor that, because that's an important part in the work that I do is really self-acceptance and self-love, and making a safe space for everybody.
Yes, and very true, and using it in its widest sense, I think, is really important, right?
Mm-hmm.
The words that we're using is how do they go out, where do they go out, who uses them, and let's be more. I think you used fluid, a little more fluid in
Mm-hmm.
our use of those words. So thank you for today. That gets us to the close of number 4 of 5. And we're going to get together and we're going to do the 5th one here soon. So look forward to sharing that with you. And thanks, Gaia. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Mwah!